kind of ending to it all. That was supposed to be a very glorious year, which it certainly was for a large portion of it. And Dillon Gabriel, if he can execute the offense, why not? We saw Joe Flacco punt a couple times with his arm.
Yep.
We saw some bad Joe Flacco, even though we had seen some great Joe Flacco for the Cleveland Browns a couple years back. Feels like a quarterback change was inevitable, and with how good their defense is, I don't think it's over for this Cleveland Browns team. If Dillon Gabriel can come in there and play some ball, is his size, which is certainly not the size of other quarterbacks. Certainly Carson Wentz, who is very tall. I mean, Carson is a
big boy,
large individual. But let's talk about Dillon Gabriel. And the only knock really is, can he see? Is he going to be able to handle it all? How about some big-time shots? We've seen undersized, and we're only saying undersized because in real life they're normal size. More athletic, more jacked than most people. On a football field, though, at that particular position with who you're standing behind and who is trying to tackle you, size.
Stop the clock. The Browns just made the most Cleveland decision in NFL history. It wasn't an injury. It wasn't a trade. It was a choice that ripped the locker room in half, sent the fan base into a full-scale meltdown, and exposed the soul of this team. You thought Shadur Sanders was the savior? You thought the swagger was finally back in Berea? Wrong. They chose safety. They chose control. They chose Dillon Gabriel. And in the process, they nearly torpedoed their entire season. This isn't just a quarterback battle, folks. This is a civil war. And it all started with a single, devastating truth bomb dropped by Pat McAfee. You're about to find out the deep-seated politics, the pressure, and the ultimate reason why the Cleveland Browns had to be forced to start the star. Let's rewind. For months, for years, the city of Cleveland has been waiting for the quarterback who doesn't just manage the game, but who dominates the narrative. We watched the draft, we saw the hype, and we all thought we knew the name. Shadur Sanders, the son of a legend, the highlight reel king, the guy who walked into any room, any stadium, and immediately owned it. Shadur wasn't just a quarterback, he was a franchise reset button. He was the spark that was supposed to ignite a city drowning in the curse of mediocrity. You saw the throws, you saw the escapability, you saw the icy, stone-cold pressure he handles. This was the guy, the new face, the new era. Cleveland was ready to believe in the swagger. The depth chart was a formality. Training camp was supposed to be a coronation. The script was written, Shadur Sanders, QB1, the end. But this is Cleveland, baby, the land where common sense goes to die, because out of absolutely nowhere, like a fax machine error from the 90s, the Browns announced their starter. Not the star, not the icon, Dillon Gabriel. A perfectly fine, solid, quiet, technically sound player, a gamer, a professional, a guy who probably has his taxes filed on time. But a franchise quarterback in Cleveland? The collective gasp from the fan base was audible across the entire Midwest. It was the safe choice, the predictable choice, the kind of choice that lands you a 9-8 record and a quiet, dignified burial. In a town built on chaos, they chose the anti-chaos.
Shadur is way better than Dillon Gabriel. He just is. If Shadur had started from the start, game one against Cincinnati at home, they would be the talk of the NFL right now, because I look at the fourth quarter yesterday, they go 0 for 4 on third down because Dillon was playing not to lose. Don't throw it to them, don't put it on the ground. And he did a great job of that. But on one of those third downs, you have to try to make a play to win the football game. And trust me, no matter what Stefanski called, Shadur would try to win the football game because it's how he was raised. You're going to make a play because you were born to make a play.
The moment Gabriel was named the starter, something felt wrong. It wasn't about the skill gap, though some argued that too. It was about the vibe. It was about the momentum the team had just stomped out. And then Pat McAfee, who seems to have a direct, non-secure line to the darkest corners of Berea, leaned into the microphone. That smirk, that knowing smirk. He said, and I quote, "Something's cooked deep inside Berea's walls." He went further. He dropped the bomb that shattered the carefully crafted organizational narrative. This wasn't a football decision. This was a politics decision, a control decision. McAfee wasn't talking about arm strength. He was talking about comfort. He implied that the coaches, specifically the conservative execution over entertainment mind of Kevin Stefanski, chose the player who would stick to the script, the player who wouldn't improvise, the player who was predictable. Shadur Sanders, with his energy, his creativity, his chaos, was a threat to the rigid system. Dillon Gabriel was a partner in the process. It became instantly clear the front office chose control over chaos. And that phrase, control over chaos, it's what set the Browns on fire. It told the fan base they were afraid of the star they drafted. They were scared of the ignition switch. The theories immediately spread like wildfire on NFL Twitter. Was Stefanski worried about Shadur challenging him? Was the front office trying to protect Gabriel from the pressure of the former QB debacle? Or was this just pure organizational fear? The fear of the unpredictable success that Shadur represented.
What do you want me to really say about Dillon Gabriel over the next 3.5 hours? Well, he was composed. Great. You know how he conducted himself? He conducted himself how a career backup should conduct himself, where you just hope that you're able to hold down the fort until the regular starter comes back. The problem is, we don't have a regular starter that comes back. Well, we do, but nobody wants to see him. So nobody wants that to happen. So here we have to hope that Dillon Gabriel, a guy who is certainly limited, a guy who's smart enough to probably be a coach in the NFL someday, has to go out there and conduct an offense. And we just little bit. And we have to hope that Quinshon Judkins is able to carry us into the end zone, and we don't have a holding call on it. Because we got two guys there who are again replacing another guy who had replaced another guy.
The quarterback debate was no longer about who was better. It was about who the Cleveland Browns wanted to be. Think about the locker room, the veterans. They're watching this high school drama unfold in the middle of training camp, and they're splitting. You have the Gabriel guys, the old school professionals who respect the grind. They see Gabriel's composure, his laser-like focus, the fact that he shows up, does his job, and doesn't rock the boat. They respect the process that Stefanski preaches. But then you have the Shadur loyalists. They see the energy. They see the guy who can make a play when the structure breaks down. They see the future. They know that in the modern NFL, safe rarely wins.
He was at UCF for a few years, then he went to Norman, played at Oklahoma, and then obviously finished it in Eugene. And the only reason I bring all that up is this guy's dealt with a lot of different circumstances and different kind of pressures, especially when he stepped up from UCF to Oklahoma. And so I think that really hardens a guy, you know, when you deal with the ups and downs of playing quarterback at some of these high-profile places and you have so many reps. You know, that's why I think Brock Purdy was able so quickly after a four-year starter at Iowa State to be able to step into the NFL and see the game pretty quickly. And I think Dillon Gabriel reminds me of that. You know, he reminds me of a guy that had a ton of reps. You put him in that offense with Kevin Stefanski, who understands how to attack.
Safe gets you home by mid-January. One player reportedly described the locker room vibe as a high school cafeteria after a bad breakup. Ouch. That is an identity crisis playing out in real time. Meanwhile, Gabriel is trying to navigate this impossible situation. He's a third-round pick suddenly thrust into a spotlight reserved for the biggest name on the roster. It's unfair. He's doing his best to maintain his utmost professional demeanor while the entire world is screaming for the guy standing next to him. This is the pressure cooker of the NFL, a philosophy war being waged over two young men trying to start their careers. Then came week one. Gabriel, the cautious tactician, trots onto the field. Half the crowd is cheering him, trying to be supportive. The other half, the honest half, is just waiting for the inevitable. They're waiting for proof that Pat McAfee was right. And what did we get? Classic Browns football, predictable, safe, afraid to make a mistake. And McAfee hammered that point home. You don't win in the NFL by trying to not lose. That line echoed through every sports bar in Cleveland. You manage the game, but you don't ignite anything either. The spark was missing. You can't be safe in the NFL. You can't rely on the defense to carry a conservative check-down offense. Cleveland had the defense. They had the running back, but they were missing the fire. Week two hit.
So Dillon Gabriel just made his first start against the Minnesota Vikings, and unfortunately he was unable to get a victory. Carson Wentz had an insane drive to win the game 21-17. But my thoughts on Gabriel in this game, I thought it's a very promising start. I'd probably give it like a B+, just because he didn't really put the ball in harm's way. Maybe one time there could have potentially been a pick, but it was a lot of quick, short passes, and I thought that for what the Browns had really asked him to do in this game, he looked really, really good against a really good Vikings defense that came in top 10, ninth best scoring defense, and Gabriel matched Joe Flacco's touchdowns, passing touchdowns.
Things crumbled even faster. Gabriel struggled against pressure. More short passes, the same conservative rhythm. They lost the game. The boos rained down harder than the Cleveland weather. On the sideline, Shadur stood silent, helmet on, watching every missed opportunity like he was watching the ending of a movie he already knew. His body language wasn't defiance, it was a calm, simmering inevitability. He knew this wasn't a competition anymore. It was a philosophy war. Inside the Browns building, the temperature hit boiling point. Reports leaked, and you know these leaks don't happen by accident, that ownership wanted Shadur starting weeks ago. Stefanski had resisted, clinging to his precious process narrative. But now, the process was failing. The team was losing. The players were reportedly starting to question the leadership. One assistant coach allegedly called it watching a crack in slow motion. The organizational confidence was eroding faster than a lakefront pier in a nor'easter. And then, quietly, in the middle of a Tuesday practice, it happened. No media announcement, no press conference, just whispers among the beat reporters. Shadur started taking first-team reps. No one said anything. It was a silent admission of guilt, a surrender to the inevitable. The front office had blinked. They had lost the philosophical war. When that information leaked, the city didn't just explode. Cleveland went nuclear. The second Shadur Sanders got back under center, the entire atmosphere shifted. The offense moved faster. The defense looked sharper. The entire team seemed alive again. Practice energy wasn't just higher, it was different. It was like someone finally plugged the Browns back into their own heartbeat. Stefanski tried the coach speak. He downplayed it as part of the evaluation process. Continuity, getting comfortable. But the fans didn't buy it for a second. The city didn't need continuity. They needed guts. Shadur Sanders wasn't just a player, he was a statement, a rebellion against mediocrity. A reminder that football is supposed to be played with fire, not spreadsheets. When he finally took that first-team snap in front of cameras, the entire tone of the franchise changed. It wasn't about being perfect anymore. It was about believing again. The reality Pat McAfee exposed wasn't that the Browns had a quarterback problem. They had an identity crisis. Dillon Gabriel was safe. Shadur Sanders was risk. The decision forced Cleveland to confront who they really were. They are a team forged in the brutal history of heartbreak, raw emotion, and defiant passion. They were not built for calm, controlled football. They've lived through Safe. Safe got them 6-11 records and predictable misery. Safe got them heartbreak. The city demanded chaos. The city demanded the man who was daring to win, not the one trying not to lose. And as Shadur finally took the reins, you could feel it in the air. Danger, excitement, belief. For once, the Browns weren't just existing, they were alive. McAfee's truth bomb didn't destroy the Browns, it forced them to face the man in the mirror. He exposed the soul of Cleveland, a team forever torn between playing it safe and chasing something bigger, between control and chaos, between logic and love. And this time, chaos won. The Gabriel versus Sanders saga is more than just a depth chart move. It's the ultimate statement about the modern NFL. The game is driven by swagger, big plays, and the willingness to risk everything for the win. What do you think?
And don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more deep dives into the NFL's most insane storylines. We'll see you next time.